Coming up on this episode of Latinas, we'll talk about the rise of Latinos in charter schools, meet healthcare leader Ana Céspedes, Bronx County Clerk Aisha Bravo, and so much more. Latinas starts now. Welcome to Latinas, a show that's all about nosotras, created by nosotras. I'm Tina Beth Pina. It's Puerto Rican Heritage Month, ¡Wepa! Which is why I'm here at the Center for Puerto Rican Studies in New York City, also known as Centro. It's the largest university-based research institute, library, and archive dedicated to the Puerto Rican experience in the United States. And not only are they celebrating their 50th anniversary, they also just got a new executive director. So let's meet her and see what this place is all about.
In many ways, the kind of work that I was trained to do and grew up wanting to do has found a perfect home here in Centro. Been really inspired by the history of so many activists and organizers, as well as academics and artists who have used whatever tool is at their disposal to create change. It is a marvel to me that I've been able to kind of get to this place, but it's not without lots of support and inspiration and mentorship from other folks. And I don't think it's any small thing that I come from this particular background as a first gen, as someone who comes from very, working class, poor backgrounds. None of this was necessarily ever seen to me as achievable. I'd never really known anyone personally who did this until I entered higher education. I first heard about Centro as an undergrad at Rutgers University, and it was in my Puerto Rican studies classes that we had read articles from Centro and learned a little bit about the history of Centro. And then I learned a lot more about Centro as a grad student at Berkeley. And very quickly it became this huge beacon, a real inspiration for somebody like me who grew up in Hoboken, just right across the river, and who has family all over New York. I thought how incredible that this institution exists and serves the community and just fosters all of our history. I'm not just a woman, but I'm a Afro-Puerto Rican, I'm a Black woman, and the first Black woman to be the head of Centro. And I think that is really incredible, especially when you take into account the way that Afro-Puerto Ricans, Black Puerto Ricans have been oftentimes erased from the national history, erased from our contributions to Puerto Rico and the diaspora. I think this is an opportunity to really bring to the fore the immense leadership and history of activism and integrity and organizing that women and Black people and Black women in particular have done in Puerto Rico and the diaspora. And I hope to kind of bring all that and hold that in me as I move forward into this position. For Centro, I see a future that is really vibrant, that is full of the kind of breadth and depth of what Puerto Ricans can offer and what we give to the world, as a place that is able to have resources and to provide resources of all kinds, intellectual and otherwise, to the community, to people who might not have ever seen themselves represented by Centro or even as part of it or being able to participate in it. I see a future of Centro that is incredibly inclusive, that is deeply rooted here in New York City, but that is related and relational across the United States, across Puerto Rico and the broad diasporas outside of the Northern Hemisphere, and in that way really speaking to the lived experiences of Puerto Ricans from all over the world.
According to the National Center for Education Statistics, public charter school enrollment has more than doubled from 1.8 to 3.7 million students nationwide from 2010 to 2021. In that same amount of time, Latino students in those schools have also increased. Correspondent Elena Romero has more in today's Prospecto Latina.
The idea of him going to a different school, getting a different education to the one I had growing up, was more in my mind than anything.
Carla Lopez is a founding parent of Brooklyn Rise Charter School, a K-5 educational institution with a heavy Latino population that emphasizes small group targeted instruction.
Growing up, you always had this thing that people say, oh, don't go for charter schools. Charter schools are always selecting, very selective of their students. They always push them to their best and to their hardest. This charter school being new, I just said, let's give it a try. And to be honest, I had no idea what were the difference between the charter school. All I knew is that they were gonna be 2 teachers to a classroom with a smaller ratio, which is what I wanted for my son.
Over 140,000 students like Mrs. Lopez's son attend 275 charter schools in New York City, compared to the million-plus students in over 1,800 public schools within the New York school system, the largest school district in the United States. In both, Hispanic students represent 41%. Like public schools, charter schools have faced a decline in enrollment as the school-age population has declined.
From what I see in our school, most of our population is Latinos, especially from Sunset Park, and I think the reason for is because they want something different.
Charter schools are publicly funded, tuition-free schools and operate independently of the state school system. Here in New York, charter schools admit students via lottery. Parents can apply through the Common Online Charter School application, open now through April 1st.
They're open enrollment schools. You don't have to live where the school is. That's one key difference, especially in the elementary world, where many of the traditional public schools are zoned by zip code. One of the benefits of charter schools is that some of that flexibility and autonomy that we have does help us to be a little more nimble. I think in partnering with families and being responsive to feedback.
Charter schools vary state by state and school by school. Like traditional public schools and some charter schools, Brooklyn Rise has been enrolling migrant children and added a second multilingual coordinator to support its increase in population.
The academic model that we have does work and is supportive of students regardless of their language background. What is interesting now, and this year is like something that we're having to be more thoughtful about, is now we have 3rd or 4th graders who maybe are in the entering stage of their English language development. And for some of these kiddos who are in these asylum-seeking shelters, like some of them have had interrupted education. So they may have only had 1 or 2 years of formal schooling before coming to our school. So we also have to take that into consideration.
Charter schools are not without their critics. Often established and maintained by for-profit organizations, these non-union schools operate independently and therefore held to a different accountability standard.
I've been very critical of the proliferation of charter schools, largely because it's become an on-ramp for privatization and for segregation. I have no judgments about parents who have hard decisions between schools that don't feel responsive and schools that might. I do have grave concerns about a state that has decided to commit public dollars to schools that are not diverse, underrepresent special education needs, students who are English language learners, and extremely low-income students. So as a state decision, I have a lot of concerns. And the ways in which corporate investors get incredible tax breaks.
Charter schools are not all bad, like they all say. Latino parents, like myself, we want to be heard. They want something different.
Parents are encouraged to do their homework to determine which school setting is best. For families looking to apply to charter schools, applications are now open. For Latinas, I'm Elena Romero.
And now for a very different story about education. This one is about the horrors of sexual violence or intimidation and why it's important to teach victims to speak up and speak out. That's the topic of today's Caliente Caliente.
You know what's interesting? Because we don't break the silence, right? So we allowed the abuser to continue to abuse, and we allowed just the whole cycle to continue. And then we're ashamed because, oh my God, did I do anything? Are they going to think that I'm responsible? And you're 7 years old. Like, obviously, I was 9 years old. There's no responsibility that we have. But we think that we're going to damage the family, but the family is so damaged as it is. And not only that, then we are adding to the abuse, right? Because that man, I can tell you, statistically, he didn't just abuse you.
Right.
There's other abused children out there, but there's no justice because it's in the family.
Yeah. And if you do speak out, in my case, I was very clear when it was happening, while it was happening, and after it happened, and then trying to seek justice for it. In some cases, you get exiled. Some cases, you get shut out from the family. I'm the problem because I'm the one who broke the silence. I'm the one who said we should do something about this. This is wrong. This is terrible. This is not okay. And I became, the person who just needed to leave. And part of that was because I was also the only Latina in my family. So in 2013, I actually did DNA testing and found my father's side of the family, the Puerto Rican side. And that has been incredibly healing for me because these are people who actually wanted to know, other family members, but they were also very accepting of my entire story.
It's liberating. Once you start speaking about it, it's liberating, it's healing.
Breaking the silence is by far the hardest thing to do. Yeah. And I agree with you that it's so liberating to be able to just share. And you're teaching others, like what we're doing right now, we're saving lives, making it okay for us to talk about this silent pandemic. We have to start breaking the chains because it's a transgenerational trauma. You think about like what went in my dad's mind, what has he gone through that he was capable of giving his only daughter to his friend.
I've been thinking about this. I've been analyzing this for years, especially with my cousin, who I trusted and who I loved, and who I actually still loved even after that, the disgusting acts. It's like I still had some type of love for him, almost like I don't want to say feeling sorry, but I can't, like there's something wrong. But it's like what conditionings are happening in families, in systems, in society, that is creating this. That's breeding this type of behavior. And so that's pretty much me asking questions has been part of my healing. Yeah. I've been going to therapy on and off. I'm a huge mental health advocate. I've been going since I was 11 years old. And I'm grateful I had a matriarch that was very supportive with things that were going on in my life and that I felt like I could confide in. But I still question the rest of the family. I never told anybody else. I didn't trust anybody else. And it's like, why don't we have these support systems? Like, where were they? What's create this dynamic of us carrying the shame, of us feeling like we've done something wrong?
Do you still talk to your cousin?
No. I don't, it's interesting because it's not like I forgave or forgot. It's just, it is. And I've let go. It's like, I don't, like a lot of the time they're like, oh, to truly be healed and whole, you gotta forgive. And for me, it was like, no, I think I'm okay with just letting it be.
When you were talking about, not wanting to talk about it, I didn't talk about it for 30 years. I didn't even want to talk to myself about it. It was forced out of me when I did this self-development program. It was forced out of me. So part of it was telling the people or telling the person. It took me almost a year or 2 years later that I wanted to forgive this person because of what he did. I still didn't understand what was going through my head, my mind, but I wrote a letter saying how I felt, acknowledging this happened because it's something that was always there, like, what do they say, the pink elephant, the elephant in the room. Mm-hmm. So I was like, this happened, but I forgive you. And I was trying to be forgiven, which I still don't understand. I don't even know if I totally forgave him or not. I'm not clear with that. But I don't remember exactly what he said, but I felt that he didn't really acknowledge what happened. His concern is like, just don't ever tell your mom. So I ended up being more mad at him. So my relationship with him had been deteriorating, and it just got worse because I felt like, this guy he didn't even apologize for what he did to me. I was a child. So it was hard dealing with that, of course, but still I felt like I had to learn how to forgive him, not for him, but for me to get rid of the resentment that I'm carrying or whatever shame. So, but I don't know if he ever, I don't believe he ever asked me directly for forgiveness. When I told my mom, he probably said something about it, but it wasn't, when something's not genuine. Mm-hmm. I felt like it was more like he was concerned that he didn't want my mom to leave him. But at this point, it doesn't really matter. It's more about me, like how am I feeling, how am I doing? And for me, every time I think about him, because he's suffering right now, very sick, but I send him love because I was like, I need to be at peace with myself. I need to liberate myself from any bad feelings, resentments. So for me, that's important, really, to forgive.
Make sure you tune in next month for the final part of this conversation between these survivors and thrivers. Poco a poco, we are finding more Latinas in STEM, like the woman you're about to meet. She has over 20 years of experience in the pharmaceutical and biotech industries. She's the Chief Operating Officer of IAVI, an American nonprofit organization that supports scientific progress in fighting infectious diseases, just like COVID-19. So get ready to meet and learn more about Ana Céspedes, today's Inspiración Latina.
I started thinking about science when I was a little kid. I would go with my father with my maths book, my physics book. I was always passionate about reading about science, and in particular about biology and chemistry. So I was 17 years old when I decided to do pharmacy and that I would be a researcher. I would do my PhD in pharmacy. My name is Ana Céspedes. I'm Chief Operating Officer at IAVI. When I started in the business world in healthcare, I was less than 30 years old, and I was in the boardroom. My colleagues were around 20 years older than me, and I was the youngest, the only woman, and they would look at you as, you are not necessarily part of this work, so you have to find your space. I moved here to the US 11 years ago, and there is an additional challenge. You are a woman, you are young, you have an accent, you haven't done your career here, you are new, you don't have a network, but with work, you can overcome any challenge. 5 years ago, I started to work in infectious diseases, and 1 year after that, COVID pandemic hit. IAVI is an organization working on HIV, tuberculosis, and emerging infectious diseases. So I remember February 2020, we were assessing whether this was going to be a small outbreak or it could be a pandemic. So my involvement was enabling that we could do 2 of the programs that we did. One was a COVID vaccine, and another one was COVID antibodies. It was extremely challenging and interesting period because that's a period where you see the immediate impact of your work. There was a lot of need of explaining to the population what a vaccine is, what is mRNA, and it's not going to change my genetic material. I dedicated a significant part of my time educating people in vaccine development because there was an opportunity, I realized, to help people understand science. The key lessons that I learned in my journey as a scientist and as a leader in the science space are 3. The first one is follow your passion. You can be good if you like what you do, but you can only be excellent when you love what you do. The second one is build a network. It's not an add-on that you do when you have time. You never have time. There's always more things to do than time. dedicate time to connect with other Latinas. And it's even more difficult when you're a single mother. I've been a single mother. For many years, I had invested a significant part of my salary in people helping me. Know that you cannot do everything, and know that it's okay if somebody helps you at home. And the third one is don't overkill yourself working, and be generous. We come here without a network sometimes, having done our PhDs in our countries of origin, and helping each other can make the difference between succeeding or just staying in a corner without knowing how we can find a pathway. Generosity pays back, always.
Thanksgiving and the rest of the holiday season is right around the corner. And here are some ideas on how you can Latinofy your meals. The first woman and first Latina to hold the job of Bronx County Clerk is inspiring. She says her abuela and CUNY's Hostos Community College both made a giant difference in her life. And that's why Aisha Bravo is today's Latina on the Rise.
The Honorable Aisha Bravo recently became the Bronx County Clerk. Raised by her grandmother in public housing, she's the first woman and the first Latina to hold the job. She works with the civil and criminal courts in the Bronx, and a huge task is bringing in enough people for all the juries.
One of the biggest roles for me would be destigmatizing the perception of serving on the jury. And I think having someone who looks like the population here in the Bronx matters.
She also works with her staff, including Administrator Teresa Torres, to help people with passports, notaries, citizenship, and documents that come out of the courts like divorces and guardianships.
I checked and it does appear on the transcript, but I cannot yet give her access to this
because she doesn't have the court order yet.
She doesn't have a court order.
Because of the word clerk, some people might not realize that the Bronx County Clerk is a huge job in both stature and responsibility. It's a lifetime appointment, and Aisha's work has an impact on thousands of people.
Her grandmother moved to New York from Puerto Rico in the 70s and was vigilant as she raised Aisha in public housing.
My grandma, she has been always very protective since I was a little girl. She wanted to make sure that I led through the good path.
What is your grandma like?
Mi abuela es una persona bien que tiene mucha energía. Pelea, es luchadora. Vino aquí de Puerto Rico a ayudar a nuestra familia a tener una educación, tener un porvenir bueno. Es una persona que nunca se da por vencida.
You're a lot like her?
I think so. You know, it's funny, you don't realize that until you get older. And you're like, don't do that as you're growing up. And then you realize, you're a fighter and I got that from you.
With money short, Aisha left high school early.
There was a necessity. And I had to choose between my education and putting food on the table, which is something no child should be faced with, but we did.
She worked in a clothing store and got a GED. She wanted to go to CUNY's Ostos Community College, but the first day with crowds of students and lots of difficult forms felt impossible. So she started to leave, and that's when career counselor Graciano Mato stepped up.
She literally did walk out of the room, and I noticed her. I said, hey, wait, what's going on?
He's like, no, sit down, I'm gonna work with you. And had he not done that and taken out the time to just follow up with me, check in with me, and make sure that I was on track, I wouldn't be here today, because it all started that day.
Graciano is now a senior success coach at Ostos and a true friend, someone she confides in.
I found the power of my voice. That's what I found at Ostos.
She sure did. She was president of the student government. She finished at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. She worked for U.S. Congressman Jose Serrano and then for his son, State Senator Serrano. She ran for office twice. She had executive roles in the Bronx Democratic Party and Community Board 7. Aisha is a single mom of 2 sons, Manny in high school and Zachariah in elementary school. And she still takes care of her grandma.
Now that she is the Bronx County Clerk, this is a huge job. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I'm just amazed. I'm so ecstatic for her. I'm so proud of her. I think that she's just gonna set a great example, being the first Latina Bronx County Clerk.
Is it important to you that you're the first woman and the first Latina to hold this job?
I think it's important that we push doors wide open, that I think that people in this borough need to see themselves reflected in certain positions of power. Those closest to the pain have to be closest to the power. This is why I think that having representation that looks like you matters.
I'm Donna Hanover for Latinas.
And that's our show for today. For more information on what you just saw, check out our website at tv.cuny.edu and follow our social media profiles because we love sharing our Latino stories with you. And please make sure you tune in next month where you'll learn about how to look your very best this holiday season, hear about getting grants for Latino restaurant owners, and so much more. Uepa! Hasta la próxima. Bye-bye.